The sun was still high in the sky when Marilyn and her daughter Ashley took the winding road back home from a serene weekend in Vermont. The drive had been smooth so far, a rare silence enveloped the two of them, broken only by the hum of the tires on asphalt and the occasional song drifting softly from the radio. Marilyn, hands relaxed on the steering wheel, glanced at the scenery as it passed, endless rows of green hills, rustic barns, and the occasional clapboard house that seemed frozen in time. Ashley sat beside her, earbuds in, scrolling through her phone, half listening to a podcast and half watching the trees blur past the window. They had been on the road for a little over 2 hours when Ashley suddenly perked up and tapped her mother's arm. "Hey, there's a store up ahead. Can we stop? I'm dying of thirst." Marilyn looked toward the small roadside convenience store that had just come into view, a modest building with a faded sign that read Carl's Market. There were 2 cars in the dusty gravel lot, and a lone red soda machine buzzed outside the entrance. She nodded. "Sure. Quick stop, okay?" Ashley was already reaching for the door handle before Marilyn had even parked the car. "Thanks, Mom. I'll be right back." "Just water," she said, already halfway out the door. Her sneakers hit the gravel with a crunch as she jogged toward the entrance. Marilyn watched her daughter's figure retreating, tall, slim, full of energy and that restless spark that came with being 17. The glass door swung open, and Ashley disappeared inside, leaving her mother alone in the quiet of the idling car. Marilyn sighed and turned off the engine. The stillness of the afternoon settled in again, accompanied by the soft chirping of birds and the distant whir of cicadas. She leaned back in her seat and let her mind drift. The weekend had been good, peaceful, full of hiking trails, long talks over breakfast, and a much-needed pause from their usually hectic lives. But now the real world awaited them just a few hours south, and Marilyn could already feel the weight of the upcoming week pressing against her thoughts. She reached into the glove compartment for a napkin and paused as her hand brushed against the inside pocket of her coat, still folded neatly on the passenger seat. Her fingers closed around something smooth and plastic. She pulled it out, staring for a second before realization hit her. Ashley's credit cards. A sinking feeling settled in her chest. She had completely forgotten that Ashley had handed them to her back at the cabin, asking her to keep them safe since she didn't want to carry a purse on the hiking trail. Now, her daughter was inside a store, walletless, cardless, and most likely already at the counter. Marilyn sat upright, fumbling to grab her keys again. She swung the door open, stepping out into the gravel with the coat draped over her arm, and started toward the entrance of Carl's Market, her pace quickening as she moved. She could already imagine the scene, Ashley confused, maybe a little embarrassed, trying to explain her situation to some small-town cashier who didn't know her from a stranger passing through. The gravel shifted beneath her shoes as she approached the entrance. A small bell chimed as she pushed open the door. Inside, the cool air smelled faintly of pine-scented cleaner and old wooden shelves. There was a counter in the far corner, stacked with candy bars and chewing gum, and behind it stood a middle-aged man with a bushy mustache, sorting through boxes while glancing at a screen. Ashley was at the front, bottle of water in hand, looking slightly flustered as she spoke with the man. She hadn't seen Marilyn walk in yet. For a moment, Marilyn stood there, taking in the simple, quiet scene, unaware that this minor interruption in their trip would mark the beginning of something far more unexpected and meaningful than either of them could have guessed. The interior of Carl's Market was simple and functional, the kind of place that had been around for decades and saw no need to change. The wooden floorboards creaked slightly underfoot, and a ceiling fan spun lazily above, pushing around the cool air. The sound of a refrigerator humming in the back accompanied the quiet murmurs of customers and the soft click of items being scanned at the register. Marilyn walked a few steps farther inside, her eyes locking onto Ashley, who now stood just beside the checkout counter, bottle of water still in hand, a puzzled look on her face. She was speaking to the cashier, a man in his late 40s, who looked slightly harried as he balanced answering questions from a delivery man and dealing with the items being brought up to the register by a customer ahead of Ashley. Ashley shifted her weight nervously from one foot to the other. She patted her pockets once, then again, and finally looked down at her phone, as if hoping the solution to her dilemma would magically appear on the screen. Her voice, though quiet, carried a hint of panic. "I'm really sorry. I thought I had my wallet on me. I must have left it in the car. Or maybe, with my mom." The cashier gave a brief nod without much attention, still focused on scanning a six-pack of soda and a bag of dog food for the man ahead. "It's fine, just step aside a second," he muttered, motioning to the edge of the counter, clearly trying to keep things moving. Ashley's cheeks flushed. She stepped to the side, clutching the bottle tightly in both hands. Marilyn approached quickly now, coat draped over her arm and the credit cards tucked firmly in her grip. She gently tapped Ashley's shoulder, and her daughter turned with visible relief in her expression. "I've got your cards," Marilyn said, holding them out. "You handed them to me yesterday, remember?" Ashley let out a sigh and offered a sheepish smile. "Oh my gosh, right. I totally forgot. I'm sorry, Mom. No harm done. You're not the only one. I've done worse," Marilyn replied with a chuckle. She placed a reassuring hand on Ashley's back, gently guiding her forward as the line cleared. As they reached the counter, the cashier, now noticeably more relaxed with the other customers taken care of, glanced up at them. "All set now?" he asked. "Yes, sorry about the confusion," Ashley said, sliding one of the credit cards across the counter. The man nodded and scanned the bottle. "No worries. Happens more often than you'd think." While the transaction processed, Marilyn looked around, noticing the small-town character in the details, a corkboard covered with handwritten notes and flyers advertising local dog walkers, guitar lessons, and a bake sale, shelves stocked with familiar brands, many marked with stickers reading local product. There was a faint smell of cinnamon in the air, likely from a row of fresh pastries near the coffee machine. Ashley took her receipt and thanked the man, but just as they turned to leave, an elderly woman who had been standing a few steps behind in line stepped forward. She wore a blue cardigan, her gray hair pulled back into a tidy bun, and her eyes carried a warmth that instantly softened the room. She had observed the brief scene and now addressed Ashley with a gentle tone. "Don't worry yourself, dear. We've all had those moments," she said kindly. "I almost left the house once with two different shoes on." Ashley laughed. "That actually makes me feel a lot better." Marilyn smiled and offered her hand. "Thank you for the kindness. It's easy to feel a little silly in those moments." "I'm Helen," the woman replied, shaking Marilyn's hand. "I come by here most afternoons after my walk. It's usually quiet this time of day." "You two just passing through?" "Yes, heading home to Connecticut," Marilyn said. "We spent the weekend up in Vermont. A little mother-daughter trip before school starts up again." Helen nodded knowingly. "That's lovely. You'd be surprised how many good memories come from little side trips like this." Ashley looked up from tucking her card into her phone case. "We weren't even planning to stop. I just got thirsty." "Best things in life are often unplanned," Helen said with a wink. They all stepped outside together, the sunlight pouring warmly over the parking lot. Helen gave a small wave and started walking down the sidewalk in the direction of a small public square visible just across the street. Ashley turned to Marilyn as they approached the car. "She was really sweet." Marilyn nodded. "She reminded me of your grandmother. Calm, practical, always finding a way to make people feel at ease." Ashley leaned against the passenger door, her eyes squinting toward the square. "Is that a market or something over there?" Marilyn followed her gaze. Tents were being set up, and colorful tables were beginning to fill with handmade goods, pottery, woven baskets, jars of jam. A handful of people moved about, chatting and arranging their displays. "I think it's a craft fair," Marilyn said. "Want to check it out for a few minutes?" "Can we?" "Just 5 minutes," Ashley said, already taking a few steps in that direction. "5 minutes," Marilyn replied with a mock-serious tone. "And I'm timing it." As they crossed the quiet two-lane road, the hum of local life grew louder, vendors calling to each other, the clink of dishes being set out, a faint melody from a guitar being tuned. It was all very modest, but there was an unmistakable warmth in the air, a sense of easy community that wrapped around them like a gentle blanket. Neither of them realized it yet, but the simple act of stepping across that street would begin a chapter they hadn't expected, one built not on grand adventures or dramatic twists, but on the quiet, human magic of unexpected kindness, honest conversation, and the beauty of slowing down for just a moment. The scent of fresh-baked bread and beeswax candles lingered in the air as Marilyn and Ashley walked past the first few vendor tables in the craft fair. The ground beneath their feet had turned from gravel to cobblestone, lined with chalk markings that helped guide the layout of booths. Ashley's curiosity pushed her ahead, pausing at a stand where hand-painted ceramic mugs were displayed in tidy rows. Each one was unique, some speckled like bird eggs, others splashed with abstract colors. Marilyn, watching her daughter from a few steps behind, felt an unfamiliar stillness. This kind of moment didn't fit into their usual routines. It had no place in her planner, no space between deadlines and calendars. Yet here they were, browsing handmade crafts on a sunny afternoon, caught in a pocket of time that didn't ask anything from them. A soft voice pulled Marilyn from her thoughts. "Excuse me, miss, would you like to try a sample?" A smiling vendor stood behind a table covered in rows of small glass jars, jams, preserves, and butters, each labeled in careful handwriting. He held out a toothpick with a dab of what looked like apple cinnamon butter. Marilyn hesitated, then smiled and accepted the sample. The flavor burst gently on her tongue, sweet, but not overpowering, with a warmth that reminded her of autumn mornings from her childhood. "It's delicious," she said. "Family recipe," the man said proudly. "We make it in small batches just outside of town." Ashley rejoined her at that moment, holding a woven bracelet in her hand. "Look at this," she said. "It's made from recycled thread." The lady said each color tells a story. Before Marilyn could reply, the sudden sound of a plastic crate tipping over caught their attention. It came from across the fairgrounds, near a stall being hurriedly arranged. A man in his 20s, lanky, wearing a worn-out cap, was crouched down, trying to gather fallen jars that had tumbled from the edge of a table. One had shattered on the ground, sticky jam spreading slowly over the cobblestones. The vendor beside him was clearly flustered, waving her hands in mild panic. Ashley instinctively stepped closer, her reflex to help kicking in before Marilyn could object. But a woman already kneeling beside the scene beat her to it. It was Helen. "There's no harm done," Helen was saying calmly as she picked up one of the unbroken jars. "Happens to the best of us. Let's just get the rest before someone steps in it." Ashley paused where she stood, then looked back at Marilyn. "She's everywhere," she whispered with a small smile. "I'm starting to think she might be the mayor of this town," Marilyn replied under her breath. After the small commotion was resolved, and the sticky mess was contained, the hum of the fair resumed. Marilyn and Ashley wandered toward a more open area where a large oak tree shaded a bench. A local artist had set up a portrait station nearby, sketching quick charcoal drawings of passers-by for a few dollars each. A couple of kids were sitting cross-legged, watching him work. Ashley pulled Marilyn by the hand. "Let's sit just for a minute." Marilyn hesitated, then followed her daughter to the bench. The breeze was soft here, rustling through the leaves above. For a few minutes, neither of them said much. They simply watched. An older couple strolled hand-in-hand past them, pausing to admire a display of wind chimes. A group of teens stood near a lemonade stand, debating whether they could each afford the homemade fudge nearby. Marilyn broke the silence first. "You know, I used to think little fairs like this were just filler in a quiet town. But there's something nice about it. People talk to each other. No rush. No pressure." Ashley nodded. "It's kind of perfect, actually. No expectations. Just being." Marilyn looked at her daughter, noticing a softness in her face she hadn't seen in a while. The stress lines that school, college applications, and social pressures had etched into her expression seemed to have faded, even if just for now. "You've been quiet lately," Marilyn said gently. "Is everything okay with school?" Ashley took a slow breath. "Yeah. I guess. It's just a lot." Everyone's acting like we're supposed to have our entire futures figured out already. It's overwhelming. Marilyn nodded, her voice calm. I remember feeling that way too. Like every decision had to be the right one or it would mess up the rest of your life. Ashley turned to her. And did it? Marilyn laughed. Sometimes I made the wrong choices. But most of the time, I learned something because of them. It's not about always getting it right. It's about how you keep going. Ashley leaned back on the bench. Maybe I needed today more than I thought. Me too, Marilyn said, surprised to realize how much she meant it. Just then, a familiar voice called out. If you ladies are staying for the pie contest, you'd better grab a plate soon, they go fast. It was Helen again, holding a paper plate with a half-eaten slice of what looked like blueberry pie. She motioned toward a row of picnic tables near the edge of the square, where locals were gathering, forks in hand. Ashley raised an eyebrow. Pie contest? Marilyn stood and brushed off her jeans. All right. 5 more minutes. Ashley grinned. You said that an hour ago. As they walked toward the tables, the town seemed to embrace them more fully than ever. Not with fanfare or spectacle, but with something quieter, the kind of belonging that didn't need to be earned or planned. It was simply offered, like a jar of jam or a kind word at a register. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Marilyn realized that the delay inside the store, that simple, forgettable hiccup, had led them to this moment. A mistake, yes, but one that had carved a new path into their day. One she was suddenly very grateful for. The aroma of cinnamon and fresh berries still lingered in the air as Marilyn and Ashley stood near the long wooden table where slices of pie had been lined up, each with a handwritten card noting the flavor and the baker's name. The contest, as Helen had promised, was clearly a local favorite. Dozens of people had gathered in a loose semicircle, many already enjoying their chosen slices on paper plates. Laughter, conversation, and the occasional joke about someone rigging the judging filled the air, and yet, as charming as it all was, the calm rhythm of the afternoon was about to falter, if only for a moment. Marilyn had stepped aside to speak with a woman selling preserves while Ashley joined the short line for pie, her eyes scanning the table for a slice of something chocolate. She wasn't in the mood for fruit. She was holding a lemonade in one hand and her phone in the other, half typing a message to a friend back home. That small distraction would become the seed of what was to follow. In the line ahead of her, a man in a red flannel shirt spoke animatedly with the woman handing out slices. "This one's mine," he said proudly, pointing to a pecan pie near the middle. The volunteer smiled politely, though clearly overwhelmed by the crowd and trying to keep track of the informal judging sheets. There was no formal system, just pens, a clipboard, and verbal votes cast with enthusiasm. Ashley stepped forward just as the woman placed a chocolate pie in front of another guest who'd been standing at the side. Ashley didn't realize the pie had already been claimed. She simply smiled, pointed, and said, "Can I have a slice of that one?" The volunteer, flustered in mid-sentence with someone else, misunderstood and began to cut a slice for her. Before Ashley could clarify, the woman from the side returned and, seeing her pie being served to someone else, spoke sharply. "Hey, that one was for me," she said, tone edged with irritation. "I asked for that slice." She was just about to cut it. Ashley froze, startled by the woman's voice. "Oh, I didn't know. I thought it was just next in line. I wasn't trying to take it from you." The woman, clearly tired and perhaps taking the moment more personally than necessary, huffed. "Well, you did. People need to pay more attention." Ashley stepped back, her cheeks burning. "I said I didn't know. It's not a big deal. You can have it." The tension hung in the air, sharp and uncomfortable, as a few nearby heads turned. The volunteer quickly set the slice aside and gestured to another. "Let's just keep things moving. There's plenty of pie, I promise." Marilyn, hearing the shift in tone from across the table, looked up from her conversation and noticed Ashley stepping away from the line, shoulders tight, expression withdrawn. She crossed the space between them quickly. "What happened?" she asked, gently touching her daughter's arm. Nothing, Ashley said, her voice low. Just a stupid mix-up. Some woman thought I was cutting in front of her or something. It's fine. But it wasn't fine. Ashley wasn't one to get rattled easily, and Marilyn could see it in her eyes, that flicker of embarrassment, of being misunderstood in public. It was the kind of moment that lingered longer than it should. I'll be right back, Marilyn said, walking over to the volunteer. She didn't confront anyone. She simply thanked the woman and asked for a slice of any available chocolate pie. A few moments later, she returned and handed it to Ashley. Here, she said. This one's even better. The card said it won second place last year. Ashley took the plate without a word. They moved toward the shaded edge of the square and found a quieter place to sit, far from the line, the laughter, and the murmurs. The moment passed in silence, interrupted only by the occasional bird call and the faint shuffle of feet on cobblestone. I didn't mean to upset her, Ashley said eventually. I wasn't even paying full attention. I know, Marilyn replied softly. But not every stranger is going to give you the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Ashley pushed the pie around with her fork. It just made me feel stupid. Like I'm some entitled kid who doesn't know how to stand in line. You're not, Marilyn said. You're kind. You're thoughtful. And you made a small mistake, if it was even that. It's not your job to carry other people's stress. Ashley didn't respond right away. But she did take a bite of the pie, and then another. After a few minutes, her shoulders relaxed a little. I guess it's weird, she said. I felt so welcome here just half an hour ago. And then that one thing kind of ruined it. It didn't ruin anything, Marilyn said gently. It was one sour note in an otherwise lovely song. It just feels louder than the rest right now. Ashley leaned into her mother's side, and for a while, they just watched the breeze move through the flags and fabric of the market. The warmth of the pie, the comfort of each other's presence, slowly erased the tension. Later, as the fair began to wind down, and the booths started packing up, Marilyn suggested they take a slow walk around the square before heading back to the car. Ashley hesitated, but eventually agreed. The stroll helped. A little space, a little movement, and gradually the moment lost its grip on her. The fair was quiet now, vendors saying goodbye, friends hugging, small-town conversations flowing naturally. As they rounded the last corner, Ashley glanced at a table of handmade greeting cards, and without thinking, picked one up. It was blank inside, but the front read, "Some days just don't go how you planned, and that's okay." She handed it to Marilyn. "Think I'll get this for me," she said with a half-smile. Marilyn nodded. "You should." They walked back to the car as the first signs of dusk colored the sky, the kind of gentle lavender and gold that only comes when a day has given you more than you expected, even if some of it was uncomfortable. Because in between the charm and the missteps, the quiet joys and the stumbles, they were learning something real about each other. About patience. About grace. And about how a moment of tension doesn't have to define an entire day. Even as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, the fair remained lively with the soft hum of conversation and the sound of chairs scraping across brick walkways. A folk band had begun playing a few yards from the picnic tables, their acoustic instruments giving the late afternoon air a soothing, almost nostalgic quality. Ashley and Marilyn had just finished browsing the last row of stalls, Ashley now holding a small paper bag containing the greeting card and a hand-poured candle that smelled of vanilla and sage. They were heading back toward the sidewalk near Carl's Market, planning to grab a bottle of water for the road before finally continuing their drive home. The energy between them had returned to a more relaxed rhythm, not quite the cheerful excitement of earlier, but something softer, steadier, and grounded. As they approached the store, Ashley slowed her steps, then stopped completely. "Mom," she said, with a mix of guilt and uncertainty, "I left that water bottle inside earlier. I never paid for it. In all the distraction, I think I set it down near the counter and walked out without even realizing." Marilyn, surprised, blinked. "Are you sure?" "I'm pretty sure," Ashley said. "I didn't mean to, everything was happening at once, and I think I got distracted." Marilyn didn't hesitate. "Then let's go back in and make it right. It's not a big deal. But I'm proud of you for remembering." Ashley nodded, but her face revealed her worry. "I just don't want that guy to think I did it on purpose." "He won't," Marilyn said. "Let's go talk to him." They crossed the lot again and entered the store, where the same soft chime welcomed them. The cashier was still behind the counter, this time leaning against the register and chatting with a man in work boots who looked like he'd just finished a long day on a farm. When Ashley stepped inside, the cashier gave a polite nod, though it was clear he didn't immediately recognize her. Ashley walked up to the counter, cleared her throat, and said quietly, "Hi. I think I left a bottle of water here earlier. I didn't pay for it, there was a lot going on, and I totally forgot. I wanted to pay now and make sure it's all cleared up." The cashier gave her a measured look, then cracked a small smile. "Well, I did find a bottle left on the counter about an hour ago. Figured someone forgot it during the rush. Thanks for coming back to take care of it. Most people wouldn't have." Relieved, Ashley reached into her pocket and handed over her card. "I didn't want to leave without fixing it. Sorry about that." "No harm done," the cashier said, scanning the new bottle and bagging it. "You're not from around here, are you?" "No," Marilyn answered from behind her. "Just passing through on our way back to Connecticut." "Well, I hope our little town hasn't scared you off," he said, handing the bag to Ashley. Before either of them could respond, a voice from the side spoke up. "They've been nothing but polite. In fact, I think they've handled today better than most locals would." It was Helen. Again. She stood beside the small rack of newspapers and breath mints, holding a carton of milk and a loaf of bread. Her eyes sparkled with that same calm kindness, and her tone carried both gentleness and conviction. "I overheard what happened earlier at the pie table," she said, addressing Ashley directly. "You showed a lot of maturity not to snap back. That woman was out of line, but you didn't let it ruin your day. Not everyone your age would have handled it so graciously." Ashley, caught off guard, looked genuinely touched. "Thank you. That means a lot." Helen nodded. "And coming back to pay for that water? That speaks for itself." Marilyn smiled, appreciating the reinforcement. "We were just saying earlier that it's often the small decisions, the ones no one notices, that reveal the most about someone's character." The man in work boots, who'd been standing nearby listening quietly, spoke next. "She's right," he said, gesturing with his head toward Helen. "Small towns remember those little things. That's how reputations are made here, not with grand gestures, but with the way people treat each other when no one's looking." Ashley glanced between the three adults, unsure what to say but clearly absorbing the weight of their words. She gave a modest shrug and said softly, "I just wanted to do the right thing." Helen looked at her fondly. "That's what makes all the difference." They left the store once more, this time stepping into the fading warmth of early evening. The fair was in its final moments, tables being folded, last sales being made, and musicians packing up their instruments. The breeze had cooled slightly, carrying with it the smells of lavender soap and warm baked goods. As they approached their car, Ashley paused again, looking out at the nearly empty square. "I feel like we were supposed to stop here today," she said. "Even with the awkward stuff. Maybe especially because of it." Marilyn considered that. Maybe. Some of the best days come from plans we never made. Ashley looked at the little paper bag in her hand, then at her mother. "Can we come back sometime?" Marilyn smiled. "Of course we can." They opened the car doors and slid into their seats, both a little tired but feeling lighter somehow, not because everything had gone perfectly, but because the imperfections had led to something unexpectedly valuable. Connection. Integrity. A sense of belonging, even if just for a few hours, in a town that would likely forget their names but not the way they showed up. As the engine started and the car began to roll out of the lot, Ashley looked back once more at the storefront of Carl's Market and the gentle lights twinkling across the square. She didn't say anything, but she didn't have to. The lesson had already settled in: a simple mistake, met with honesty and kindness, could open the door to something far more lasting than any perfect plan ever could. The warm glow of the setting sun bathed the town square in golden hues as Marilyn and Ashley found themselves lingering near the edge of the fair, reluctant to leave the serene atmosphere they had unexpectedly discovered. Helen was still nearby, arranging a small pile of books and homemade greeting cards on a folding table, her gentle smile inviting conversation. Marilyn took a breath, realizing that this brief encounter was becoming something more meaningful than she had anticipated. She approached Helen, feeling a sudden urge to connect beyond the brief exchanges that had marked their earlier interactions. "Hi, Helen," Marilyn began, hesitating slightly. "Thank you again for your kindness today. You really made us feel welcome." Helen looked up from her table and smiled warmly. "It's my pleasure, Marilyn. I've lived in this town for over 40 years now. It's not much, but it's home. I'm glad you and Ashley found a moment of peace here." Ashley, who had been quietly admiring the hand-painted cards on the table, joined the conversation. "It's funny how sometimes the smallest places can leave the biggest impressions." Helen nodded thoughtfully. "That's the truth. People here may be few in number, but the heart of this town is large. It's built on simple acts: sharing a pie, helping a stranger, stopping to listen." Marilyn felt a warmth spread through her chest. "You remind me of my mother," she said softly. "She had that same ability to make anyone feel at ease." Helen's eyes twinkled. "Mothers have a way of passing down wisdom, don't they? I used to be a schoolteacher here. I saw generations grow up through these streets. Sometimes I think that's why I come to fairs like this one, watching young people connect, watching the future unfold." Ashley looked at Helen with newfound respect. "That's amazing. I can't imagine teaching in a place so small, but it must have been special." "Oh, it was," Helen replied, folding a small napkin into her pocket. "There's a quiet magic in knowing your students' families, sharing stories, celebrating their successes, and even comforting their struggles." Marilyn's mind drifted to the challenges Ashley faced back home: school pressures, college applications, and the constant feeling of rushing toward an uncertain future. Suddenly, the weight of those worries felt a little lighter in Helen's presence. "I sometimes worry that I'm not doing enough," Marilyn admitted. "Between work and daily life, I fear Ashley and I are drifting apart." Helen smiled knowingly. "That's a common fear among parents. But moments like today, the ones where you slow down and simply share time, those are what build the bridges." Ashley reached out and took Marilyn's hand. "I think today helped me see that, too." Helen leaned closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Life isn't about the big gestures or grand plans. It's about the small connections, like a smile, a kind word, or a shared pie." They stood together, the soft hum of the fair fading into the background as twilight deepened. A faint breeze carried the scent of lavender and freshly baked bread, mingling with the laughter of children chasing each other between stalls. Marilyn felt a sense of gratitude welling inside her. "I'm glad we stopped here today, even if it was by accident." Helen's eyes sparkled. "Sometimes, the best things come from the unexpected." Ashley smiled. "I think I'm going to remember this day for a long time." Helen glanced down at the cards again and then looked back up. "If you ever find yourselves back this way, please stop by. We always have room for friends here." Marilyn nodded. "We will." "Thank you, Helen." With a final wave, Helen began packing up her table, but Marilyn and Ashley stayed for a few moments longer, watching the sun dip below the horizon and the first stars begin to twinkle. As they finally turned toward their car, the quiet peace of the evening wrapped around them like a soft blanket. The unexpected encounter with Helen had turned a simple stop into something rich with meaning, a reminder of the value of kindness, connection, and slowing down to appreciate the moments that matter most. Marilyn glanced at Ashley, who looked content and at ease, a far cry from the worried teenager who had been tense earlier that afternoon. It was clear to Marilyn that today's detour had brought them closer in ways neither had anticipated. The car engine started with a gentle hum, ready to take them home, but neither was in a hurry. The road ahead might be long, But for now, they carried with them a new kind of light, a quiet reassurance born from a small town, a kind stranger, and the simple joy of being together. The fading warmth of the afternoon sun stretched across the town square, casting long shadows that danced between the stalls and vendors as they began packing up their handcrafted treasures. Marilyn and Ashley lingered by the edge of the fair, the casual, easy rhythm of the small-town event still wrapping around them like a gentle embrace. They had found in Helen not just a fleeting kindness but a subtle thread connecting them to this place and moment. But just as they prepared to head back to the car, their eyes caught sight of a different kind of scene unfolding across the street, a quiet stir that invited curiosity. A small group of people were bustling about in the town square on the opposite side of the road. Colorful tents and tables were being arranged with swift, practiced movements. Handmade signs announced that a craft fair would soon open its doors, promising fresh opportunities for community and commerce. The hum of preparation created an inviting buzz that reached across the street, tempting Marilyn and Ashley with a simple question: what if they took just a moment longer to explore? Ashley's gaze fixed on the bright banners and the artistic displays beginning to take shape. "Mom, do you think we could check it out? Just for 5 minutes? Please?" Marilyn smiled, amused by the familiar eagerness in her daughter's tone. 5 minutes, huh? You make it sound like a favor. Ashley laughed softly. It is a favor. I'm trying to make the most of this unexpected day. With a playful shake of her head, Marilyn nodded. All right, 5 minutes. But I'm holding you to it. They crossed the quiet street together, the sounds of the unfolding craft fair greeting them like old friends. As they stepped onto the cobblestone paths, the change in atmosphere was subtle but unmistakable. The colors were brighter here, the air tinged with the scents of fresh pine and beeswax candles, the familiar murmur of voices blending with the rustle of leaves. Ashley wandered ahead, drawn to a table covered in delicate quilts. Each one was a masterpiece of stitching and color, bearing the mark of hours of dedicated handiwork. A woman seated behind the table smiled warmly and greeted them, her hands still busy with needle and thread. Welcome. You've come at a perfect time. We're just setting up for the weekend fair. Would you like to see some of the newer patterns? Ashley nodded eagerly, leaning closer to examine the intricate designs. These are amazing. How long have you been making quilts? The woman chuckled softly. Oh, since I was a little girl. It's a family tradition. My grandmother taught me when I was about 7. Meanwhile, Marilyn found herself drawn to a nearby table displaying an assortment of homemade jams and preserves. The jars glistened in the late afternoon light, their vibrant colors inviting closer inspection. The vendor, a friendly man with sun-kissed skin and a straw hat, looked up and smiled as Marilyn approached. Interested in trying some samples? We have apple cinnamon, blueberry lavender, and a special blend of wild berries. Marilyn accepted a small spoonful of the blueberry lavender jam, the flavors unfolding gently on her tongue. This is delicious. Is this all made locally? Absolutely, the man replied with pride. We source all the fruit from local farms around here. It's part of what makes this place special. As the minutes slipped by, the 5 they had promised themselves began to stretch, though neither Marilyn nor Ashley seemed eager to leave. Their pace slowed, taking in the details that made the fair feel less like a market and more like a celebration of community and craftsmanship. Ashley's eyes caught a small photo display at one of the booths, framed and carefully arranged on a wooden easel. The black and white pictures showed a group of smiling faces from decades past. Marilyn squinted to read the faded caption beneath them. Class of 1985, Millbrook High School, she murmured. A spark of recognition flickered within her. Wait, that name, Linda Collins. I think I went to school with her. Ashley peered over Marilyn's shoulder. Do you want to say hi? Maybe she's here. Marilyn hesitated for just a moment before making her way toward the booth. The woman tending it looked up with a friendly expression as Marilyn approached. Excuse me, Marilyn said tentatively. Are you Linda Collins? The woman smiled broadly. Yes, that's me. And you must be Marilyn. I recognized your face from those photos. The surprise of the reunion was immediate and warm. Linda reached out and took Marilyn's hands in hers. "It's been so long. What brings you back to town?" Marilyn explained the weekend trip and the unexpected stop, and soon the two women were reminiscing about old classmates, favorite teachers, and the little events that had marked their youth. Ashley listened from nearby, observing how the past suddenly came alive through their shared memories. Before long, Linda pulled out a small notebook and scribbled down her contact information. "We should get together soon. Maybe a lunch next time you're here?" Marilyn nodded, touched by the spontaneous reconnection. "I'd like that very much." As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over the quiet town, Marilyn and Ashley found themselves sitting on a bench nearby, the buzz of the fair fading into a comfortable silence. Ashley sipped on a bottle of water, a contemplative look in her eyes. "Today turned into something I never expected," she said quietly. "I was just thinking about water. Now, it feels like I'm part of this place, even if just for a little while." Marilyn smiled, feeling the same quiet contentment. Sometimes, it's the detours that lead to the best discoveries. Not just of places, but of ourselves and the people we've forgotten. Ashley nodded, leaning her head on her mother's shoulder. "I'm glad we stayed a little longer." The moment stretched out, wrapped in the fading light and the peaceful hum of a town that had suddenly become more than a stop along the way. As the sun began to lower beyond the horizon, the quiet hum of the small town seemed to deepen, settling into a gentle rhythm that was almost like a heartbeat pulsing through the streets. Marilyn and Ashley walked side by side through the narrow lanes that bordered the fairgrounds, their footsteps muffled by the soft crunch of fallen leaves beneath their shoes. The air held a crispness that hinted at the approaching fall, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and earth. Ashley, carrying the small bag with her newfound treasures, a hand-poured candle and the delicate greeting card, felt lighter than she had in weeks. The pressure of school, deadlines, and the future, which had seemed so overwhelming just hours ago, now appeared distant and manageable, like a fog lifting from a landscape revealing clearer skies. Marilyn glanced at her daughter, who was staring up at the quaint shop fronts lining the main street. Each storefront was a story in itself, painted signs with fading letters, flower boxes overflowing with late-blooming daisies and asters, and windows displaying handmade quilts, jars of honey, and stacks of well-loved books. The town had the kind of charm that movies tried to capture but rarely did justice. It was quiet, unassuming, and yet alive with subtle warmth. "Do you want to walk a little further?" Marilyn asked. "There's a bakery just around the corner. I think I could go for a piece of pie after all that wandering." Ashley's face lit up. "That sounds perfect." As they moved, the conversation shifted from light observations to more personal reflections. Ashley admitted how rare it was for her to feel truly relaxed these days. Marilyn shared her own memories of growing up in a town that had similar simplicity, where neighbors knew each other's names and life moved at a pace that allowed for meaningful connection. They passed a small park where an elderly couple sat on a bench feeding the ducks in the pond. The couple smiled warmly at the mother and daughter as they strolled past. Nearby, a group of children played tag beneath the golden canopy of maple trees, their laughter ringing clear and bright. Ashley stopped and watched for a moment, then turned to Marilyn. "It feels like a place where you could just be. No pretending, no expectations. Just people." Marilyn nodded, feeling the truth of that statement settle in her heart. It's easy to forget how important that is. We get so caught up in rushing forward that we miss the beauty of simply being present. They found the bakery easily, a small brick building with a faded sign that read Millbrook Bakery. Inside, the scent of freshly baked bread, cinnamon, and vanilla greeted them like an old friend. The walls were lined with shelves of pies, cookies, and loaves of rustic bread. A young woman behind the counter smiled as they entered. "Welcome. What can I get for you?" she asked cheerfully. Marilyn glanced at Ashley. "Maybe a slice of your best pie, and 2 lemonades?" The woman nodded. "You're in for a treat. Our blueberry pie won first place at last year's county fair." They found a small table by the window and settled in, the late afternoon light casting a warm glow across the wooden surface. Marilyn watched as Ashley carefully took a bite of her pie, eyes closing momentarily as the flavors unfolded. It was a quiet scene, a mother and daughter sharing a simple meal in a place that felt untouched by the chaos of the outside world. "So," Marilyn said after a pause, "what's next for you? School applications?" Ashley sighed but smiled. "Yeah, but it doesn't feel as scary right now. Today has been a reminder that there's more to life than just deadlines." Marilyn reached across the table and squeezed Ashley's hand. "And no matter what happens, we'll face it together." Ashley's smile grew wider. "Thanks, Mom. I really needed that." Outside the bakery window, the town's main street slowly emptied as the evening approached. Porch lights flickered on, and the soft glow of lamps began to warm the windows of homes and shops. The peacefulness of the scene was a balm for both of them, a contrast to the busy, hurried lives they were about to return to. As they left the bakery, Marilyn took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the crisp evening air. The town, in all its quiet charm, had offered more than just a break. It had given them a chance to reconnect, to rediscover the simple joys of life and each other. Walking back toward their car, Ashley stopped and picked up a small, smooth stone from the edge of the sidewalk. She turned it over in her hand, feeling its cool weight. "Maybe we should keep coming back," she said softly. Marilyn smiled, the warmth in her heart mirrored in her daughter's eyes. "I'd like that very much." As they settled into the car and prepared to leave, the stars began to appear one by one, twinkling like tiny promises in the vast sky. The road ahead was long, but for now, Marilyn and Ashley carried the quiet magic of a forgotten town filled with charm, a place that had reminded them that sometimes, the best parts of life are the ones you never planned for. The night had deepened into a velvet canopy dotted with countless stars as Marilyn and Ashley finally left the warm embrace of the small town behind. The road stretched ahead in soft, rolling curves, illuminated only by the gentle glow of their headlights cutting through the darkness. Yet even as the miles unfurled beneath their tires, Marilyn's mind lingered on the afternoon's unexpected encounters, particularly the brief reunion with Linda Collins, a name that had stirred up decades-old memories and a renewed sense of connection. The discovery of Linda's booth at the craft fair had been one of those rare moments when the past collides pleasantly with the present. The simple photos of high school classmates, yellowed at the edges but alive with the laughter frozen in time, had transported Marilyn back to a simpler era. Seeing Linda's familiar face, now framed with the wisdom of years, had been like finding an old bookmark in a cherished novel, proof that some stories endure, waiting patiently to be reopened. As Ashley settled into the passenger seat, the subtle hum of the car engine filled the comfortable silence between them. Marilyn reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, noticing a small notification blinking on the screen. It was an email from an unfamiliar address but with a subject line that caught her attention immediately, from Linda Collins, "Great to see you today." Curious, Marilyn tapped it open. The message was warm and informal, capturing the same spirit she had witnessed earlier. "Dear Marilyn, it was such a pleasure to reconnect after all these years. Seeing your face brought back so many memories, and I'm so glad we had the chance to catch up, even if briefly. If you're ever back in town, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to get together for coffee or a walk down memory lane. Take care. Linda." Marilyn smiled softly, the genuine tone of the note filling her with a quiet happiness. She glanced over at Ashley, who was scrolling through her phone, earbuds in place but not fully engrossed. Marilyn tapped her daughter's shoulder gently. "Hey, Ashley, check this out," she said, showing her the email. Ashley glanced up and smiled. "That's cool. You guys really reconnected." "Yeah," Marilyn replied. "It's funny how small the world feels sometimes. You think people drift apart, but moments like today remind me there's still so much we share." Ashley nodded thoughtfully. "Makes me think about the people I've lost touch with too. Maybe I should reach out." Marilyn reached over and squeezed Ashley's hand. "It's never too late." The conversation drifted toward memories of high school, teachers they admired, favorite hangout spots, and the awkwardness that had accompanied their youth. Marilyn recalled the annual fall festival that Linda had mentioned, a tradition she had somehow forgotten over the years but now felt a stirring desire to revisit. "Maybe next time we're here, we could plan to attend that festival," Marilyn suggested. "Seems like a good way to stay connected." Ashley grinned. "I'd love that. It'd be fun to make new memories alongside the old ones." As they drove, the familiar landmarks of their journey began to appear, distant clusters of houses, the faint glow of streetlights, and the winding river that shimmered under the moonlight. The quiet comfort of the road matched the growing sense of closeness between mother and daughter, a bond strengthened by the day's adventures and the simple joys of rediscovery. Later, as Marilyn pulled off the highway to fill up the gas tank at a late-night station, she found herself reflecting on the unexpected detour that had led them here. What began as a quick stop for water had blossomed into an afternoon of meaningful connections, old friendships rekindled, and new ones forged. The small town's unassuming charm had invited them to pause, listen, and embrace the moments that truly mattered. Ashley leaned against the car, sipping her water and watching the stars. "You know," she said quietly, "sometimes I think we get so caught up in planning the future, we forget to live the present." Marilyn nodded, feeling the truth of her daughter's words resonate deeply. Maybe that's the real lesson from today. As they climbed back into the car and resumed their journey home, the miles seemed less daunting. Ahead of them lay not just the familiar roads but the promise of more moments like these, unexpected, real, and profoundly human. The soft glow of the dashboard lights cast gentle shadows inside the car as Marilyn and Ashley drove through the winding roads leading out of the small town. Outside, the night had fully settled, a quiet blanket dotted with stars stretching across the sky. The rhythmic pulse of the engine and the occasional hum of the tires on asphalt formed a soothing soundtrack to their drive, a perfect contrast to the day's earlier bustle. Ashley sat quietly in the passenger seat, her gaze distant, fingers lightly tapping the edge of the window. Marilyn glanced over, sensing a vulnerability in her daughter's expression, a delicate tension beneath the surface, one she had glimpsed before but not fully understood until now. "Hey," Marilyn began softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "You've been awfully quiet." Ashley turned to her, offering a small smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" Ashley hesitated, then sighed. "School. College applications. The future. It feels like I'm carrying a weight I'm not ready for." Marilyn nodded, understanding well the unspoken pressures weighing on her daughter's shoulders. "I know it can be overwhelming. When I was your age, I felt like the entire world expected me to have it all figured out already." Ashley's eyes searched her mother's face. "Did you?" "No," Marilyn admitted with a chuckle. "Far from it. I made plenty of mistakes. But I learned that life isn't about getting everything right the first time. It's about being willing to keep going, to adapt, and to be kind to yourself along the way." Ashley sighed deeply. "Sometimes I worry we're drifting apart, Mom. Between school, friends, and everything else, I feel like we don't really connect the way we used to." Marilyn's heart tightened at her daughter's words. She reached over and took Ashley's hand in hers, the warmth of the gesture bridging the distance that had grown between them. "I feel that too," Marilyn confessed. "Life gets busy, and it's easy to lose sight of what really matters. But moments like today remind me that we're still here, for each other." Ashley's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I want us to be close again. I want to be able to talk without feeling like I'm just another problem on your to-do list." "You're never a problem," Marilyn said firmly. "You're my priority. And I'm sorry if I haven't shown that enough lately." They fell silent for a moment, the only sounds the soft rustling of trees outside and the steady hum of the car. Then Ashley spoke again, her voice quieter but filled with hope. "Maybe we could make time for things like today. No plans, no schedules, just us." Marilyn smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand gently. "I'd like that very much. We can find more days like this. Days that remind us who we are and what we mean to each other." Ashley's smile deepened, and for the first time in a while, the weight on her chest seemed to lift, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of peace. As they continued down the road, the conversation drifted to lighter topics, favorite movies, Music they wanted to listen to on the drive home, plans for the coming weekend. The shift felt natural, like a fresh breeze clearing the air. Marilyn found herself reflecting on the day's unexpected journey, from a simple stop for water to the warmth of a small town, the kindness of strangers, and the rediscovery of her daughter's spirit. It was a reminder that sometimes, life's greatest gifts come not from grand events but from quiet moments of connection and understanding. As the miles passed beneath them, the sky slowly began to lighten with the first hints of dawn. The world outside the car was waking up, but inside, Marilyn and Ashley shared a newfound closeness, one born from honesty, vulnerability, and the shared promise to face the future together. The dawn broke gently over the quiet town, the sky painted in soft hues of lavender and peach. Marilyn and Ashley had parked their car near the edge of the square, the lingering calm of the early morning wrapping around them like a soft blanket. The townsfolk were slowly stirring to life, storefronts lifting their shutters, the scent of freshly brewed coffee spilling onto the cobblestone streets, and the occasional greeting exchanged between neighbors. Helen appeared from her small home just down the street, her familiar blue cardigan buttoned neatly and her hair gathered in the usual tidy bun. She carried a woven basket filled with fresh garden vegetables and a thermos of tea. Her eyes twinkled as she spotted Marilyn and Ashley, and a warm smile spread across her face. "Good morning," Helen called out softly, stepping toward them with a graceful ease that spoke of decades spent embracing the rhythms of this place. "I thought I'd catch you before you left." Marilyn smiled in return, grateful for the early visit. "Good morning, Helen. We were just about to start our drive back." Helen nodded knowingly, setting the basket gently on the hood of the car. "I wanted to remind you both, sometimes the best memories come from the unexpected detours. Those moments when plans change and the world opens up just enough to let something new in." Ashley stepped forward, intrigued by the gentle wisdom in Helen's voice. "That's true. Today felt like one of those days." Helen's eyes softened. "It's easy to forget in our busy lives. We rush from one thing to the next, always chasing what's ahead. But here, in this quiet town, we learn to slow down, to notice the small details, the smile of a stranger, the taste of homemade jam, the sound of children's laughter on the breeze." Marilyn nodded, feeling the truth of Helen's words settle deep inside her. "I'm realizing that more and more. Today taught me how important it is to be present, to really see and listen." Helen smiled warmly. "And it's those moments that stay with us, long after the road has taken us elsewhere. They shape us, remind us of what matters most." Ashley glanced at her mother, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I don't want to forget this day. Or the way it made me feel." "You won't," Helen assured her. "Not if you carry it in your heart." The morning air was crisp, carrying with it the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant crow of a rooster. Marilyn and Ashley felt a calm settling over them, a peacefulness that seemed to anchor them in the present even as the day beckoned them onward. Helen reached into her basket and handed them each a small jar of homemade honey, golden and fragrant. "For your journey home," she said. "A little sweetness to remind you that life's simple pleasures are always within reach." Marilyn accepted the jar with gratitude, while Ashley's fingers closed around hers, a tangible connection to the kindness they had found here. As they prepared to say their goodbyes, Helen's eyes held a quiet invitation. "Remember, this town is always here, waiting to welcome you back. Not just for the fairs or the festivals, but for the moments in between, when life asks you to pause and breathe." Marilyn felt a lump in her throat, touched by the depth of the sentiment. "Thank you, Helen. For everything." Helen's smile lingered as she stepped back, watching as Marilyn and Ashley climbed into their car. The engine started softly, and as they pulled away, Helen stood on the corner, waving gently. The road stretched ahead, but the memory of the quiet town, and the meaningful reminder Helen had offered, remained vividly alive. It was a gift neither Marilyn nor Ashley would soon forget. As the car disappeared down the winding road, the town resumed its tranquil rhythm, the sun climbing higher and bathing the streets in warm light. Life would move on here as it always did, but for two travelers, the simple lessons learned in this quiet place had created a lasting imprint on their hearts. The sky stretched out above them, vast and clear, as Marilyn guided the car away from the quiet town that had welcomed them so warmly. The road ahead was familiar but felt different this time, as if the miles themselves carried new meaning, each curve, each stretch of asphalt a reminder of the day's unexpected journey. The soft hum of the engine filled the space between mother and daughter, both of them wrapped in a calm that had been hard to find in recent months. Ashley sat in the passenger seat, her eyelids heavy, the warmth of the late afternoon sun streaming through the window lulling her toward sleep. She leaned her head against the glass, the world outside blurring gently as her thoughts drifted away from school deadlines and college applications, far from the pressures that had once weighed so heavily on her young shoulders. Marilyn stole a glance at her daughter's peaceful face and felt a profound sense of gratitude. This day, born from a simple request for water and a forgotten wallet, had blossomed into something neither of them could have planned. It had given them moments of laughter, kindness, and reconnection, moments that would linger long after the car's tires had worn down the road back home. The fading light cast golden hues over the landscape, the rolling hills dotted with clusters of trees, the occasional farmhouse nestled among fields, and the distant silhouette of mountains standing guard against the horizon. Marilyn breathed in the scene deeply, allowing herself to feel present in a way she hadn't in weeks. They passed a small rest stop, and Marilyn considered pulling over, but the quiet contentment between them made the thought unnecessary. Sometimes the best pauses were the ones taken without words or interruptions, simply shared in silent understanding. Ashley stirred, blinking slowly as she sat up straighter. She reached over and gently squeezed Marilyn's hand. "Thank you for today," she said softly. "I didn't realize how much I needed it." Marilyn smiled, squeezing back. "Me too. Sometimes life's little detours remind us of what's really important." A comfortable silence settled again, broken only by the soft melody playing from the car's speakers, an old folk song that seemed to fit the mood perfectly. Marilyn found herself humming along quietly, the music weaving itself into the fabric of the moment. As the miles slipped away, Marilyn thought about the woman named Helen, whose kindness had sparked much of their afternoon. She thought about the small market, the unexpected pie contest, and the feeling of belonging that had wrapped around them like a warm blanket. And she thought about Ashley, her laughter, her quiet moments of reflection, and the subtle shifts she had witnessed in her daughter's demeanor throughout the day. The conversation from earlier replayed gently in her mind, their shared fears, hopes, and promises to be more present for each other. It was a conversation Marilyn knew would ripple through the days and weeks to come, shaping how they navigated the challenges ahead. Ahead, the first signs of the familiar cityscape began to appear, the twinkling lights of homes and streets stretching out like a welcoming embrace. The world they had left behind was waiting for them, as it always did, but now it felt less daunting, less hurried. Ashley's head finally rested against the seat again, her breathing steady and calm. Marilyn's eyes softened as she watched her daughter drift towards sleep, the peacefulness of the moment anchoring her own heart. She reached over and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from Ashley's forehead. "We'll come back here," Marilyn whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "This place, it's ours now." The road ahead was long, but the memories of this day would carry them through. The simple joys of kindness, connection, and presence had become their compass, a quiet guide leading them home. As the car continued its journey, the last light of day faded into the gentle embrace of night. The stars above began to twinkle once more, silent witnesses to a day neither mother nor daughter would ever forget. A week had passed since Marilyn and Ashley's unplanned detour had led them to the small town that now held a special place in their hearts. The days since had been filled with the usual rush of life, work emails, school assignments, and the hum of daily routines, but beneath it all lingered the warmth and quiet joy they had found in that unexpected moment of pause. On a bright Saturday morning, the mother and daughter duo set out again, this time with intention. The car was packed lightly, filled with picnic blankets, a camera, and an assortment of snacks. Marilyn had made a point to clear her calendar for the day, determined not to let life's usual busyness crowd out the chance to reconnect. As they approached the familiar stretch of road leading into the town, Ashley's eyes lit up with anticipation. "I can't believe we're really doing this," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and disbelief. "It feels like our own little secret." Marilyn smiled, her hands steady on the wheel. It's our tradition now. Something just for us." The town welcomed them with open arms, unchanged in its gentle charm. The streets bustled softly with the preparations for the weekend fair, vendors arranging their tables with practiced care and townsfolk greeting each other with warm familiarity. The air was alive with the scent of fresh flowers, baked goods, and the faint hint of wood smoke from nearby fireplaces. Ashley hopped out of the car first, her feet eager to explore. "Where should we start?" she asked, scanning the vibrant displays. Marilyn reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. "Why don't we make a list of all the things we want to do today? That way, we won't miss a thing." Ashley nodded enthusiastically, already pulling out her phone to take pictures of colorful quilts and jars of jam. The fair felt like a living tapestry of the town's spirit, a place where creativity, community, and tradition intertwined seamlessly. They spent the morning wandering the stalls, sampling homemade pies, and chatting with the artisans whose hands had crafted the treasures before them. Marilyn noticed how different Ashley seemed, more relaxed, more engaged, and visibly happier than she had been in weeks. At one booth, Marilyn ran into Linda Collins again, the woman from their previous visit. Their reunion was warm and genuine, filled with laughter and plans to meet again for coffee and stories of old times. Linda introduced them to a few other locals, and before long, Marilyn and Ashley found themselves welcomed into the heart of the community in a way that felt both unexpected and profoundly comforting. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, the two settled beneath the sprawling branches of an old oak tree in the town square. They spread out the picnic blanket and unpacked their snacks, the simple act of sharing a meal becoming another thread woven into their growing tradition. Ashley leaned against her mother, content and thoughtful. "I love this," she said quietly. "It feels like we're making memories that will last a lifetime." Marilyn kissed the top of her daughter's head. "That's exactly the idea. Moments like this don't happen by accident. We have to make time for them." The fair carried on around them, children playing nearby, friends greeting each other with familiar smiles, the soft music of a local band drifting through the air. It was a scene of harmony and belonging, a reminder that amidst life's chaos, places like this existed to ground and nurture the soul. As the day drew to a close, Marilyn and Ashley walked hand in hand toward their car, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange. They paused for a moment to look back at the town square, now quieting as vendors packed away their goods and the last visitors made their way home. Ashley squeezed Marilyn's hand. "Can we come back again next month?" Marilyn nodded without hesitation. "Absolutely. This is just the beginning." The car rolled down the familiar road, the stars beginning to twinkle overhead, marking the end of one day and the promise of many more to come. The simple mistake that had set them on this path, a forgotten wallet, a stop for water, had blossomed into a cherished tradition, a source of connection and joy that neither mother nor daughter would ever forget. And so, with hearts full and spirits lifted, Marilyn and Ashley embraced the quiet magic of their new ritual, knowing that sometimes, the most beautiful moments in life are born from the unlikeliest of beginnings.